The air in the orientation hall of Chengdu's prestigious Digital Canvas Academy hummed with a peculiar blend of parental pride and palpable anxiety. Lin Wei, early 40s, lean and with a perpetual furrow in his brow that his slightly dishevelled hair did little to conceal, felt the anxiety far more keenly. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit, and adjusted the glasses perched on his nose. Beside him, his daughter, Lin Xiaohan, 15 and vibrating with a nervous excitement of her own, clutched the glossy welcome packet. Her bright, intelligent eyes, so like his own, yet currently unclouded by his brand of worry, scanned the opulent hall. This was it, the dream. Xiaohan, his Xiaohan, admitted to one of the top digital arts academies in the country. A wave of pride, sharp and sweet, washed over Lin Wei, momentarily eclipsing the gnawing unease. He'd downshifted his own life for this, trading a lucrative, soul-crushing 996 software engineering career in Shenzhen for a quieter, less ambitious IT job at a local Chengdu university. All for Xiaohan, for her well-being, for her future. And now her future seemed dazzlingly bright. "Look, Dad, they have a dedicated VR studio," Xiaohan whispered, her voice tight with awe. Before Lin Wei could respond, a booming voice cut through the murmur. "Ah, Mr. Lin, Xiaohan! So glad you made it early." It was Mrs. Yao, mother of Yao Bowen, another new student. Mrs. Yao, a whirlwind of energy in a designer dress, radiated an almost aggressive confidence. "Bowen is just ecstatic. Of course, he's been taking advanced animation workshops since he was 12, and his private tutor from the Beijing Film Academy says he has extraordinary potential. We've already networked with a few of the senior instructors. It's all about giving them a head start, isn't it?" She beamed, her words a barrage that left Lin Wei feeling distinctly inadequate. He managed a tight smile. The dean's welcome speech was a blur of inspiring rhetoric and daunting expectations. Lin Wei's gaze kept drifting to Xiaohan, her face rapt. He wanted this for her so desperately. But the competitive air, thick with the unspoken ambitions of hundreds of parents, choked him. This was Chengdu, supposedly more laid back than the coastal megacities, but the pressure cooker of Chinese education, the pervasive Neijuan, felt inescapable even here, especially in an elite institution like this. Later that week, Xiaohan received her first major individual assignment. Design and animate a short character-based loop expressing a complex emotion, resilience in the face of adversity. Top submissions will be showcased. Xiaohan's eyes shone. "This is amazing, Dad. Resilience. I have so many ideas." She threw herself into it, sketchbook filling with dynamic poses and expressive faces. But within days, the initial excitement curdled into frustration. The concepts felt shallow, the animation clunky. Her usual digital tools seemed to fight her. The blank screen of her tablet became a taunting void. One evening, Lin Wei found her slumped over her desk, chin in her hands, staring despondently at a half-finished, awkward animation. "I don't get it," she mumbled, her voice small. "It's just not working." "What should I do, Dad?" This was the familiar cue. In the past, for simpler school projects, Lin Wei would have dived in. He'd suggest concepts, troubleshoot technical glitches, perhaps even subtly guide her hand. The instinct surged now, powerful and immediate. He saw Mrs. Yao's confident smile in his mind, heard her boasts about Bowen's flawless progress, which she'd already trumpeted in the parents' WeChat group. Xiaohan couldn't fall behind. He opened his mouth to offer a solution, a shortcut, anything to erase the distress from her face. But then a different thought, a hesitant whisper, surfaced. He'd been reading, late at night, articles and forum posts about a different kind of parenting, one that emphasized fostering independence, allowing for struggle. It resonated with a deeper, quieter part of him, the part that remembered his own somewhat neglected childhood, where self-reliance was born of necessity, not philosophy, yet had served him well in some ways. He took a breath. "What do you think is not working, Xiaohan?" he asked, his voice gentler than he intended. Xiaohan looked up, surprised. I don't know. The movement is stiff. The emotion isn't there." "Okay," Lin Wei said, perching on the edge of her bed. "So if the movement is stiff, what are some ways animators usually tackle that? What have you learned in your online tutorials?" He kept his tone neutral, inquisitive. A flicker of annoyance crossed Xiaohan's face. "I've tried those. It's not helping. I just need to know what to do." Lin Wei's heart ached. It would be so easy to just tell her, but he held firm. a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. Maybe sketch some more poses, or look at reference videos of people showing resilience. What does resilience feel like to you? Xiaohan pushed her chair back abruptly. Why aren't you just helping me like before? You always know how to fix these things. Her voice was sharp with frustration and a hint of betrayal. She stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. The silence in the room was heavy. Lin Wei felt like a failure. This new approach, this letting her struggle, felt cruel, unnatural. He was her father. His job was to protect her, to smooth her path. Yet the memory of Professor Chen's recent guest lecture at the academy echoed in his mind. Professor Chen, a semi-retired animation legend with kind eyes and a gentle, rumbling laugh, had spoken about the imperfect journey of a digital artist. Lin Wei had attended, more out of a sense of duty than genuine interest, but the old man's words had unexpectedly struck a chord. We learn more from our cracked pots than our perfect vices, Professor Chen had said, his gaze sweeping over the small audience. The struggle, the wrestling with the material, with the idea, that is where the true art, the true artist is forged. Do we want our young artists to merely replicate our maps or learn to read the stars for themselves? After the lecture, Lin Wei had lingered, asking a fumbling question about guiding a struggling young artist. Professor Chen had smiled patiently. Ah, the parent's dilemma. We want to shield them from the storm, but it is the storm that teaches the tree to root deeply. Sometimes, the best guidance is a steady hand on the tiller, not a new set of sails. Remembering this, Lin Wei took another deep breath. Xiaohana, he said softly, I know this is hard, and I know I can often see technical solutions, but this assignment is about your voice, your understanding of resilience. If I just tell you, will it truly be yours? Xiaohan didn't turn around. The set of her shoulders spoke of continued frustration. Lin Wei's resolve wavered. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe some struggles were too much for a 15-year-old. The next day, Xiaohan submitted her resilience animation. The feedback was polite but lukewarm, technically competent in parts but lacks emotional depth. The core concept feels underdeveloped. Xiaohan was quiet that evening, a brittle sort of quiet that worried Lin Wei more than her earlier outburst. As the weeks passed and more complex assignments piled up, Xiaohan's frustration with her father's new, less interventionist approach solidified into articulate opposition. One Saturday, after a particularly grueling critique session for a character design project, she confronted him. She'd spread printouts on the dining table, articles from parenting blogs, forum posts from other academy students. "Dad, look at this," she said, her voice tight with an almost lawyerly precision. "This article says strategic parental support is key to creative success. And here this student from Shanghai Animation School, her parents hired a professional concept artist to mentor her. Bowen's mom is constantly arranging industry talks for him, getting his portfolio reviewed by her contacts. That's not coddling, Dad. That's strategic support. Are you saying you don't want to strategically support me?" Lin Wei felt a flush creep up his neck. "Xiaohan, that's not what I—" "Isn't it?" she cut in, her eyes, usually so bright, now narrowed with hurt and accusation. "This letting me struggle philosophy, it sounds nice in a book, maybe one of Professor Chen's lectures. But this is the real world, Dad. This academy is incredibly competitive. If I fall behind now because I'm supposed to be figuring everything out on my own while everyone else gets a head start, how is that helping my future? It feels like you're setting me up to fail, or maybe," her voice dropped, laden with a new, painful suspicion, "maybe you just don't want to be bothered anymore." The accusation, "don't want to be bothered," struck Lin Wei like a physical blow. He sank into a chair, the neatly arranged printouts blurring before his eyes. Was she right? Was his attempt at fostering independence merely a rationalization for his own inadequacy, his own fear of not being able to keep up with the likes of Mrs. Yao? His past burnout in Shenzhen, the quiet resignation of his current job, did these make him shy away from the intense engagement modern parenting seemed to demand? "Xiaohan," he began, his voice hoarse. "That's not true. I believe in you. I believe in your talent." "Belief doesn't teach me advanced rigging techniques for 3D models, Dad," she retorted, her frustration boiling over. "Belief doesn't get my work noticed. Mrs. Yao is actively doing things. It's easy for you to talk about process when it's my future on the line." She swept the papers off the table in a gust of anger and stormed off to her room, the slam of her door echoing through the apartment. Lin Wei sat alone, the silence pressing in. Xiao Han's words, so sharp, so logical from her perspective, had pierced his carefully constructed new philosophy. He spent the rest of the weekend in a state of turmoil, replaying her arguments, questioning his every motive. He found himself wandering through the historic Kuanjai alleys, the aroma of spicy Sichuan snacks and the murmur of tourists a distant hum. He ended up at a traditional tea house, the kind Professor Chen sometimes frequented. He didn't see the professor that day, but the quiet atmosphere, the scent of jasmine tea, and the unhurried movements of the tea master helped to calm the storm within him. He couldn't just abandon his conviction, not yet. There had to be a way to bridge this gap, to show Xiao Han that his approach wasn't neglect, but a different, perhaps harder form of love. He decided to seek out Professor Chen the following week, not for answers, but perhaps for a different perspective. He found the professor in his small, cluttered office at the academy, surrounded by books, sketches, and half-finished clay models. Lin Wei, hesitant at first, recounted Xiao Han's accusations, his own self-doubt. Professor Chen listened patiently, occasionally nodding, his fingers steepled. When Lin Wei finished, the professor was silent for a long moment, then he gestured to a small, gnarled bonsai tree on his windowsill. "See this little fellow?" he said, his voice a low rumble. "It endures careful pruning, sometimes even wiring that forces its branches into uncomfortable positions. It faces the wind and the changing seasons, sometimes with less water, sometimes with more. If I kept it in a perfectly climate-controlled box, shielded from every stress, would it develop this character? This strength?" He paused. "A bird must break its own shell, Lin Wei. If you break it for the chick, it will be too weak to survive. Your daughter is intelligent. She sees the efforts of others. Perhaps she needs to understand that your less direct help is not an absence of support, but a different kind of active tending, one that trusts her to find her own way to the sunlight." The professor's words didn't offer an easy solution, but they reaffirmed something in Lin Wei. He wasn't trying to be neglectful, he was trying to cultivate something deeper. He went home and did more research, not just on parenting, but on learning theory, on the psychology of resilience, on the long-term effects of different kinds of support. He realized he needed to communicate his intentions more clearly, more vulnerably. A few days later, he approached Xiao Han. "Xiao Han, he said gently, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. And you're right, it is a competitive world, and other parents are doing a lot. I understand why my approach feels lacking." Xiao Han looked at him, surprised by his admission. "My intention," Lin Wei continued, choosing his words carefully, "is not to abandon you, or to make your path harder unnecessarily. It's because I believe, truly believe, that the skills you develop by tackling these challenges yourself, the problem-solving, the perseverance, the ability to learn from your mistakes, those are the things that will truly serve you in the long run, more than any specific technique I could teach you, or any connection I could make for you. It's because I believe, truly believe, that the skills you develop by tackling these challenges yourself, the problem-solving, the perseverance, the ability to learn from your mistakes, those are the things that will truly serve you in the long run, more than any specific technique I could teach you, or any Wapeji." He met her gaze. "I will always help you find resources. I will support your learning. If there's an online course for that advanced rigging software you mentioned, we can get it. But the act of learning, the struggle and the eventual mastery, that has to be yours, because that's where your real strength, your unique voice as an artist, will come from." Xiao Han was silent for a long time, her expression unreadable. Lin Wei's heart pounded. Had he made things worse? Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay, Dad," she said, her voice quiet. "The online course? Can we look for one?" A wave of relief washed over Lin Wei. It wasn't full agreement, but it was a start. They found a well-regarded intensive online course on 3D rigging. Lin Wei paid for it, ensured she had the dedicated time and a quiet space to work. And then he stepped back, a feat that required monumental self-control. He'd see her struggling, brows furrowed in concentration, muttering to herself. The urge to jump in, to offer a quick tip, was immense. But he'd remember Professor Chen's bonsai, the chick breaking its shell, and he'd busy himself with his own work, or make tea, available for moral support, but not direct intervention unless she truly hit a dead end and asked for conceptual clarification, not a solution. To his surprise, and perhaps to hers, Xiaohan began to make progress. He'd overhear her small triumphant yes from her room. She started participating more actively in online student forums, not just asking for help, but sometimes offering advice on areas where she'd gained proficiency. She didn't openly acknowledge the shift in her approach or thank him directly, but Lin Wei noticed a new spark in her eyes, a subtle confidence in the way she carried herself. She was still stressed, still faced creative blocks, but the helpless despair seemed to have lessened. Then came the midterm team project. Create a 60-second animated short for a local youth mental health initiative. It was a high-stakes assignment, with potential for real-world exposure. Xiaohan was grouped with Yao Bowen and another, quieter student named Meilin, who seemed easily intimidated. The team dynamics were problematic from the start. Bowen, technically skilled but utterly lacking in initiative, relied heavily on his mother's input. Mrs. Yao, true to form, had already arranged a consultation for their team with a professional animator she knew through her extensive guanxi. Lin Wei heard all about it in the parent WeChat group, her messages practically vibrating with pride. Xiaohan came home fuming after their first team meeting. "It's awful, Dad. Bowen just wants to do what that professional his mom found told him. It's all flashy effects and complicated camera moves, but there's no heart in it. My ideas for a simpler, more emotional story were completely dismissed as not ambitious enough, and Meilin is too scared to say anything." Lin Wei felt his old anxieties surge. This was exactly the kind of situation where his intervention could level the playing field. He could call in a favor from an old colleague in the game industry, get Xiaohan some high-level advice. The pressure to do something was immense, fueled by Mrs. Yao's relentless updates about Bowen's team's amazing progress. But he held back, remembering his promise to Xiaohan and to himself. "That sounds incredibly frustrating," he said, validating her feelings. "What do you think you can do in this situation?" Xiaohan threw her hands up. "What can I do? Bowen has the expert on his side. It feels like my contribution doesn't even matter." Her eyes welled up. Maybe you were wrong, Dad. Maybe this is where I do need you to step in." The team's project limped along, a disjointed collection of technically proficient but emotionally barren scenes, largely dictated by the external professional's overly complex advice, channeled through Bowen. Xiaohan's more heartfelt, simpler story concepts were ignored. The deadline loomed, and their animation was a mess. One evening, just days before the submission, Xiaohan called Lin Wei from a quiet corner of the academy library, her voice choked with tears. "It's hopeless, Dad. Bowen just does what that professional told him, and no one listens to my ideas. Meilin tries, but she's too nervous. I'm going to fail this. The animation is terrible. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Mrs. Yao is even helping Bowen polish his scenes at home with special software." The despair in her voice was a raw wound. Lin Wei's heart clenched. He dropped what he was doing and rushed to meet her near the academy. He found her sitting on a bench, shoulders slumped, her face pale and tear-streaked. The sight of her utter dejection reignited all his deepest fears. His fear of her failure, his fear of his own inadequacy as a parent. The urge to call his old contacts, to pull strings, to fix this for her, was a physical ache in his chest. This was it, the moment his philosophy would either crumble or prove its worth. He sat beside her, putting an arm around her shaking shoulders, letting her cry. He didn't speak, just listened to her torrent of frustration and fear. He visualized Professor Chen's calm, wise face, the gnarled strength of the bonsai. He remembered the articles he'd read, the core message. Resilience is built through navigating adversity, not by avoiding it. He took a deep, shaky breath. "Xiaohan," he said, his voice thick with empathy, but also a new, hard-won firmness. "I see how much this hurts, and I know you want me to make it better." He paused, turning her gently to face him, looking directly into her tear-filled eyes. "And a part of me, a very big part, wants to do just that. To call someone, to tell your team what to do, to make this perfect for you." He took another breath. "But I can't animate this for you, Baobei. I can't force your team to listen. That wouldn't be your success, or even your learning. What I can do," his voice grew stronger, "is tell you again that I believe in your voice, your ideas, your heart. This project, this grade, it's one moment in a very long journey. But learning how to navigate this, how to stand up for your vision, or how to find a new way when the old one is blocked, or even how to contribute your best in a flawed situation, that will last you a lifetime." He gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "I know you think direct help, like Mrs. Yao gives Bowen, is the answer. And maybe for some it gets quick results, good grades. But Xiaohan, I'm not parenting for the next deadline. I'm thinking about the artist, the woman you'll be in 10, 20 years. What kind of strength, what kind of true confidence will you have then if all your problems are solved for you now?" He saw a flicker of understanding, a lessening of the raw panic in her eyes. "So, what do you think you can do now, Xiaohan? Even if it's small, even if it doesn't win or make the whole project perfect, what part can you make truly yours?" He didn't offer solutions, only unwavering belief and his presence. He tried to convey with all the love in his heart that her effort, her integrity in the process was what he valued most, far more than any external validation. Xiaohan was quiet for a long time, the sounds of Chengdu's evening bustle a distant backdrop. Then she took a shaky breath and slowly straightened her shoulders. "My segment," she said, her voice still a little hoarse. "The character introduction. It's only 10 seconds, but I can try to make that part reflect what I originally wanted. The emotion. Even if the rest isn't great." A small, fierce hope bloomed in Lin Wei's chest. "That sounds like a good plan," he said softly. In the remaining days, Xiaohan poured herself into her 10-second segment. Lin Wei didn't ask for updates, didn't hover. He saw the light on in her room late into the night, heard the soft click of her stylus. She didn't magically transform the team or the overall project. It remained a somewhat disjointed piece. But when they finally presented it, Xiaohan spoke about her team's work with a new quiet dignity, taking ownership of her contribution. Their project didn't win any major accolades. Another team, perhaps Bowen's, with its technically polished but impersonal animation, Lin Wei suspected Mrs. Yao's professional contact had practically storyboarded it for them, received an honourable mention. But during the informal peer review session and later in a quiet comment from an instructor, it might have even been Professor Chen, who was a guest judge for the final showcase, Xiaohan's 10-second segment was singled out. "There's a sincerity here." The instructor noted an emerging artistic voice in this introduction. Brief, but it connects. Later that evening, as Lin Wei was making tea, Xiaohan emerged from her room. She stood awkwardly in the kitchen doorway for a moment. "Dad?" Thanks," she mumbled, not quite meeting his eye, "for, not fixing things." Lin Wei smiled, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the tea. "Anytime, Bao Bei." Their conversations in the following weeks became more open, less fraught with his anxiety and her defensiveness. Lin Wei found himself sketching more in his own spare time, idle doodles at first, then more focused drawings, reconnecting with a dormant part of himself. He felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. His well-being, he realized, was intrinsically linked to his ability to trust, not just Xiaohan, but the process of life itself. Months later, Xiaohan was tackling a new, complex solo project, developing an original character and a short animated narrative. Lin Wei observed her from a distance. She still faced challenges, technical glitches that made her sigh with frustration, creative blocks that sent her pacing her room. But her first instinct now was not to panic